Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining and welcome back to Wall Street Silver. Our guest today is my good friend, Jeffrey Tucker. He is the founder and president of the Brownstone Institute. He is also the former editorial director of the American Institute for Economic Research. Welcome back, sir.
That's such a pleasure to be here as always.
Yeah,
I'm always very happy to come on your show. It's great.
yeah, it's a huge pleasure having you on always, Jeffrey. And a lot of people have been speculating online, and this is kind of why I brought you on is the Fed losing control? A lot of people are saying that the Fed doesn't know what they're doing. They're only really reactionary. And what's your thinking on that?
I think it's been true for some time. You know, there was a great deal of disorientation that came about in the early part of 2020. Because Powell had intended to unwind the catastrophic policies of Ben Bernanke, which began in 2008, which was a direct consequence of policies that began in 2001.
Mhm.
But he slammed interest rates to zero, and you'd have to be a complete idiot to believe that that was the right way to respond to a housing bubble, was by extending the bubble from housing to the whole global economy. That's basically what Bernanke did with his great idea. Whatever the problems are in the housing sector, let's not just fix that, but make those same problems a macroeconomic problem for the entire planet Earth.
Crazy.
And that policy persisted all the way up to 2019, when Powell decided, look, we've got to normalize the situation and get interest rates back up into real terms and stop this distortion. God knows what kind of destruction has happened that you couldn't really see or feel. Actually, what happened was the biggest corporate media tech bloat in the history of humanity. And so you had all these gigantic corporations that are flush with cash because borrowing was free, basically,
Right.
and expansion was the potential was infinite. So they're just throwing labor resources and all sorts of resources to their corporations, making them larger and larger and paying ever more salaries to ever more people who are bored out of the mind, so they didn't have anything to do. So they invented ESG and DEI and HR tyranny over every business, and all the usual. And so that's what happened between 2008 and 2019, was this enormous distortion of basically everything that ruined not just the corporate structures and industrial structures, but also the culture and politics and everything else. It made life crazy. Powell started to unwind that, and then that campaign was stopped by, oh, guess what? The great virus, right?
Yeah.
And so, and that began pretty much in earnest in, I would say about March 12th, which is pretty interesting. If you look at the Fed's activities, they were trying to ramp up rates for the previous 6 or 8 months, and then suddenly he reversed himself. This is before any announcements were made to the American people. So the Fed was in on it. So, you would love to have firsthand, be a fly on the wall or whatever. I mean, did the CIA come to Powell and say, all right, now it's time to do your duty? Yes, my guess is that the answer is yes.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, there's this terrible bioweapons that's going to kill everybody from China. We have to, all the powers of the Federal Reserve have to be deployed. And like an idiot, or maybe like a blackmailed person, he went along with it
Yeah.
and repeated the same mistakes of his predecessors, and slammed down rates to zero again, and embarked on the greatest inflationary campaign in modern life.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just the Fed; it was the EU, and it was the UK, and it was Australia, and it was Canada. It was everywhere. And then, oh, sure enough. And then, of course, the stimulus payment started pouring out, and everybody's going, oh, what? Look, the government's giving me money. This is weird. I used to give the government money. Now they're giving me money. There's something weird. Well, 18 months later, the government took it all away in the form of inflation anyway. So
Yeah.
we've had far more inflation than we ever had stimulus. And the Fed's been trying to soft land, what they say soft land, which is that we've talked about this, but I think this is just bunk. There's not going to be any soft landing because there was never a takeoff in the first place. So we've lived through such enormous distortions, over the last 3 years,
Absolutely.
3.5 years, that it's almost unbelievable. The economic data you can't trust anymore. You can't trust the GDP. You can't trust the jobs reports. You can't trust true inflation numbers. You can't trust anything that's coming out
Yeah.
right now. And you're and now the news media is being, and your listeners need to understand this. The Washington Post 2 days ago ran a big article by Taylor Lorenz, who's somewhat infamous, but she said that the White House is very frustrated that American people are not happy with economic conditions, and they're
Really?
not and they're not believing the data that's coming out. And so the Biden administration is really upset about this because, Bidenomics is working, as they constantly say. So deep in the article, she says the White House is working with social media companies like Facebook and
Oh
TikTok
yeah.
to make sure to de-amplify negative comments about the economy and amplify good comments. So in other words, so this is very important for your listeners. The news you read about economics now is being strongly influenced and muscled and strong-armed by the White House and government agencies to be all good news and pretty and everything else, and suppress bad news. They're doing for economic affairs what they did for the virus, what they did for the Ukraine war, what they've done for global warming, everything else. So now, really, for the first time, at least to my knowledge, you've got all the powers of the government pushing now only good economic news. Despite all the evidence all around us of declining incomes, disappearing middle class, all the panic, on the part of people that they cannot pay their bills anymore. Middle-aged people are moving home with their grandparents. I mean, the
Yeah, it's
whole thing is
crazy.
a huge disaster. But you are not and will not read about it in the mainstream press because government agencies are working very tightly with social media companies and with mainstream media companies to make sure they suppress all bad economic news.
Wow.
The Washington Post admitted this 2 days ago in his paper. Now, this is probably unconstitutional. It's probably illegal, but they don't
Yeah.
care. They're
Yeah,
doing
of
it anyway.
course. So I just wanted to let everyone know about our new sponsor, Strategic Wealth Preservation. They are an international precious metals dealer, and they are a secured storage provider that have headquarters in the Cayman Islands. The company owns and operates a large Class 3 UL rated vault in the Grand Caymans, and they offer other strategic locations as part of its global storage network. They specialize in the acquisition, secure storage, and liquidation of precious metals for individuals, companies, trusts, and wealth management professionals on behalf of their clients. So if you guys want to check them out, the link is in the description below. That's absolutely crazy, Jeffrey. And just like what you said, they're suppressing kind of certain news through social media networks. 450,000 Canadians in Quebec are right now, they're on strike due to inflation and poor working conditions. And there's about 2 million Canadians a month going to the food bank every single month. And most of them are working. So you don't hear that in the mainstream media, like what you just spoke to your point. But where do you see where do you see now gold and silver going? Like, it's a huge important factor for our channel too, and our audience is now there's censorship on the economic data. White House is working with these social media companies to just put out good information about the economy. So where do you see gold and silver
Well, I
going?
mean,
Yeah, it's crazy
gold,
times.
silver, Bitcoin, all the old safe havens are coming to life. You're starting to
Right.
see this now. And when I start getting phone calls from friends saying I need to start buying gold, I need to start stock up and stuff, I mean, you can tell something's going on, right?
Right.
Because we live in times where people don't trust anymore, people don't believe. So it doesn't matter that none of the stuff's appearing in the mainstream news. It really doesn't matter because people don't believe it anyway. I mean, every day now in the press, you're reading that the new word, and you can follow this stuff, the way this stuff works. The new word that they're using for inflation is that it has subsided. Okay. I'm not entirely sure I know what subsided means.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a slightly ambiguous, little bit fancy word meaning lower or something. It's
Yeah.
not clear what it means subsided, but it certainly doesn't mean going down. I mean, it certainly doesn't mean reversing the effects of the last 4 years. And I looked up sticky prices right now, which tends to be fairly reliable because it eliminates food and energy from the main CPI, if you can trust that. But let's just say you can. Well, sticky prices right now in October registered 5.6%, which is higher than it's been in 32 years.
Jeez.
So I don't know this term subsided. I'm just not sure that's the
Subsided.
first word that comes to mind when you look at the highest rate of inflation in a third of a century.
Yeah, I know it's absolutely crazy. And I even read something this morning. Unrealized losses on securities held by banks, it jumped by about 22%, to about 684 billion in
Hmm.
Q3, in just Q3 alone. So, they don't have these losses on the books. That's why they're unrealized for these banks.
Yeah.
When do they become realized?
All of this is going to, there is no way we can continue to put this off,
Uh,
for the next 5 years. I'm assuming that 2024 is going to be a catastrophic year
yeah.
for banks, for big cities, for the big city real estate, for everybody. It's going to be so bad. And all the latest reports you're getting from the National Federation of Independent Business, you probably saw that report that came out yesterday, and the confidence levels are collapsing,
Yeah.
over inflation, profitability, and very interestingly, and I think this is extremely important for people to understand, the ability to find talented workers who
Oh,
are willing to show up on time and do their job. I mean, this is a major problem in America today. And this is for the first time in my life,
yeah, it's
And I tell
crazy.
you what, Americans are getting used to this idea that nobody really works. We all just sort of pretend to work, and mostly,
Yeah.
we're just goofing off all the time. This is the ethos of the American worker today, and it's fundamentally changed after the lockdowns and stimulus payments.
Yeah.
2 weeks ago, it was so interesting because I've gotten used to it also. 2 weeks ago, I went to Mexico for about 10 days,
Mm-hmm.
Mexico City, and it was actually startling when I got off the plane and got in the cab, started going to where I was staying over in Condesa. Just seeing streets filled with people scurrying around and workers everywhere, and all the restaurants packed and people
Really?
serving, everybody's bustling around all over the place. I was like, what is going on? How come everybody's working?
Right.
Why is everybody doing stuff? It's because we don't see that in this country anymore.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
it's universal. It's everywhere in Mexico
Wow.
City. Everybody's bustling around doing everything. Everybody's hustling for a buck, selling new things, working late, showing up early, and that is just not happening in this country. The work ethic, just that sort of fundamental drive to live a better life
Yeah,
and to
absolutely.
deserve it and earn it through your hard work is nearly gone.
Yeah.
And it was started to be depleted in the 21st century with the cheap money and everything, where people thought that all you have to do is have a credential, you wave it at some fancy pants boss man, and he's giving you 6 figures for doing absolutely nothing but using a mouse jiggler and pretending to work. Okay, so that's been going on for a long time. It got far worse during the absurdist economic environment of 2020 and 2021 and 22, where the money, doubled and tripled, and the work went away completely. And so a whole generation was introduced to a magic phony baloney life
Yeah.
in which you get richer by not working at all. That has not changed. And it's wrecked the work ethic of an entire generation or two. That is a really fundamental problem. That sort of labor capital that we used to count on in this country has been depleted to the point of nothing. And it's as serious as depletion of physical capital and savings and everything else. So wouldn't you know it, when something collapses, everything collapses.
Wow. Yeah, it's crazy times we're living in, Jeffrey.
Yeah.
I think you're right about 2024. We're watching everything very closely around, and it's right around the corner, 2024. And it's such a huge pleasure having you come down to Wall Street Silver. Every time you come down, we learn a lot more, and it's just it's so interesting, our conversation. So such a huge pleasure, Jeffrey, for you coming down to Wall Street Silver.
It's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, and where can people contact you? Where can
Oh,
they
yeah.
find you?
I run brownstone.org, and we're focusing more and more on economic issues with the great work of David Stockman and other people. And I write daily for the Epoch Times, which is one of the few independent media places left on the planet Earth. So I'm
Yeah.
grateful for them.
Yeah, no, super grateful for you coming down here, and hopefully we'll love to have you on soon.
Okay. Thank you.